And I hope we have once again reminded people that man is not free unless government is limited. There's a clear cause and effect here that is as neat and predictable as a law of physics. As government expands, liberty contracts.
From this day forward, it's going to be only America first. America first.
The Liberty Podcast is brought to you by Proven Arms and Outfitters, specializing in rifles, pistols, tactical gear, and more. Learn more at ProvenOutfitters.com.
Welcome back to the Liberty Podcast. It is the 3rd of October, 2024, and while much of the country is turning its attention to the longshoreman strike, which has just begun in the last couple of days, and the devastation that will undoubtedly deliver to our store shelves and our supply chain. And while others are looking over to the Middle East and seeing Israel defending itself day after day after day from Iran-backed terrorists and missile strikes, here, closer to home, our eyes and our prayers and our hearts are all centered on Western North Carolina, where we have entered day 6 since the devastating residuals of Hurricane Helene roared literally into the region overnight and have destroyed some towns entirely. And I'm not exaggerating when I use that word destroyed. Others have been cut off and will be cut off from civilization and from our help for many days yet to come. And some more heavily populated areas with better infrastructure, are starting to gain their footing and assessing their immediate needs, and then they'll start looking to the longer term. All of this is going on, by the way, while it seems that the federal government has been and continues to be very slow to take action on behalf of these American citizens. The Biden administration was real proud of itself when it announced that 1,000 soldiers from Fort Liberty, we call it Fort Bragg, here in North Carolina, will immediately be deployed to Western North Carolina, President Biden said on October 2nd. Now, keep in mind, that's about 5.5 days too late in most people's estimation, especially the ones who have been on the ground and seen the devastation and the suffering, and of course, the bodies, the dead bodies in the trees, in the rivers, on the streets, everywhere, in cars. The Department of Defense is also sending 22 helicopters. Where do they come up with these numbers? 22? For an area this size, what good is 22? The National Guard has activated more than 700 members to work on the delivery of supplies and to conduct search and rescue with 15 aircraft and 275 vehicles. They got there first, well ahead of the troops from Fort Bragg. Now, when they say that troops are being immediately deployed, let's just keep in mind that you don't move 1,000 personnel and their equipment by air and by land immediately. You begin and then you roll it out and you begin the mission. But there's no immediately going on here. I would imagine that if the troops are there now, they're just arriving, and then they're going to have to assess what is needed, and the needs are vast. And if you just spend any amount of time on social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, you will see the cries for help, and they're largely going unheeded by the federal government. Fortunately, we have American citizens and heroes who have risen to the occasion, who didn't need to be told what to do. They just did. And that's the way we operate. The Florida Congressman Corey Mills, a military veteran, was on earlier today on one of the streaming shows. He has delivered with his small team 18,000 pounds of supplies using his own aerial assets and his own people, his own volunteers. He's from Florida, okay? Greg Biffle, an ex-NASCAR driver, happens to own a helicopter, as many NASCAR drivers do. He has been literally in the air all over the area looking for people who are stranded and who have not been able to communicate. He found one yesterday, the 2nd of October. A gentleman down on the ground found a mirror, and he held the mirror into the sky to create a reflection, which the helicopter pilot, Mr. Biffle, picked up. And then after 6 attempts to land in a very precarious area, he got down on the ground and was able to deliver a lot of much needed supplies, some EpiPens, some food, some fuel. This is one man. And we're hearing about this all over the place. And one of the hubs of aviation activity is right here in Moore County, the Moore County Regional Airport. If you take your phone and open the Flight Aware app and search for SOP, which is the call sign for Moore County Regional Airport, and look at their departures over the past several days, you will see flight after flight after flight, both fixed wing aircraft and helicopters leaving from Moore County Airport to points west. For example, just today, 10:26 a.m., a Beechcraft Bonanza headed to Burnsville, an airport near Asheville. At 11:41 today, a Beechcraft King Air, that's a twin-engine turboprop, headed off to Banner Elk, which is above the Boone Blowing Rock area in the mountains. Yesterday, October 2nd, departures to Jefferson in Ashe County, 4 of them. A Kodiak 10-seater, that's kind of a big single-engine plane. That thing can carry a lot of equipment. Took off for Statesville, which is one of the key delivery points because it's just outside of the affected region and has a rather large airport. At 3:36 yesterday, a Robinson helicopter took off and headed to Hickory Regional Airport. This is all going on right out of our own airport, and the supplies are coming in from drop points all over the county, starting with on the very first day after this tragedy beset us last Saturday. The Double Eagle Harley-Davidson dealership out toward Carthage has been collecting for days supplies, as well as the Village Chapel, Red's Corner, the food truck hub in Southern Pines, also the loading dock at Sandhills Community College, which is only minutes from the airport, or you can drive directly to the airport where they have a collection point. And as we were getting ready to record today, I witnessed a Facebook post from an airport. I'm not sure if it was ours or another one, where the individual was saying of most urgent need in terms of supplies, socks, high protein soup. So that would be soup with, beef and chicken and hefty soup, chunky soup. I believe there's a brand called Campbell's Chunky Soup. Well, that's what they're talking about. High protein energy bars, snack bars, breakfast bars, high protein. That means peanut butter and other high protein ingredients. And then finally, electrolyte drinks, because dehydration is a serious problem when you have not had access to drinkable water for days and days and days, which is the scenario that these thousands and thousands and thousands of people, these mountain people, these good, hardworking people are enduring because the federal government has betrayed them. And then you got to love this. You got to love this, and we're going to show it to you right now. In the mountains, there's a mountain man, and if you can't tell that he is one, just check out the beard and the hat. He has a team of pack mules. And look at these guys lined up, dutifully carrying supplies on their backs into otherwise inaccessible areas, like a throwback to 200 years ago. And this is what people are doing. They're using ingenuity, they're using aircraft, they're using mules, and they're using their own grit and determination to save lives. And by the way, just today, the death toll from all of the inland destruction of Hurricane Helene, which would be Georgia, South Carolina, and North Carolina, and into Tennessee, surpassed 200 as of October 3rd. Half of those deaths are unfortunately in North Carolina. This is a really sad period of time. And, we can't, our grief will not lessen a week from now. We'll still be hearing the stories. They'll still be finding the bodies. In fact, I believe it was Corey Mills who said today during an interview that authorities expect to be finding bodies through the end of the year. It's October, folks. It's only October. The other ramification of this is that early voting begins on October 17th in North Carolina. You might wonder, how are these people going to vote? And then you sort of have that fleeting thought, that moment where you realize, gee, maybe some of these Democrats would be just as happy if these country folk from mostly red counties who vote Republican, maybe they'd be just as happy if they couldn't get out to vote, if they didn't have an opportunity to cast their vote, especially now that they're pissed off. And that's an understatement. That's a complete understatement. And then they have to listen to Kamala Harris, who, of course, is using this natural disaster as sort of a convenient campaign photo opportunity. She, of course, never goes into the belly of the beast, whether it's the southern border or a natural disaster. So she's in Augusta, Georgia on October 2nd. Augusta did have its share of devastation, but nothing like the Carolina mountains, not even close. She's in Augusta, where she's proud to announce that residents in states devastated by Hurricane Helene will receive $750. I could barely say it because it's so obnoxious. $750 in federal aid through FEMA. $750? Could you not have rounded up to 1,000? You give $8 billion to Ukraine every time they come with their handout. $750? And then think of the practicality of this. How are they going to get the money? You can direct deposit it, I guess, for those that have bank accounts. But how are they going to access the accounts? They can't go online. They have no electricity. They can't drive to the bank. The roads are closed. And then if they could get a hold of the money, what are they going to spend it on? The stores are being decimated, first by the hurricane and its aftermath, and now by these vile union mobster longshoremen who are going on strike. Their impact on availability and supplies will hurt these people in these areas most affected by this disaster. Pardon me. But Harris praised Georgia Governor Brian Kemp for his leadership and thought that she was really coming through, man, in the clutch with the $750, ladies and gentlemen. Now, keep in mind, every year, the United States of America has billions of dollars annually pledged to countries all over the world, countries, some of whom we've never heard of, billions of dollars. We're not talking about countries at war like Ukraine or Israel. We're talking about Ethiopia and other very poor, desperate countries that have ongoing humanitarian crises. And we're funding them all the time, and maybe that's okay. But now we find out that such a large percentage of these FEMA, Federal Emergency Management Agency funds, have been allocated to the care and feeding of illegal immigrants in our homeland that FEMA is actually warning that they might run out of money before hurricane season even ends. You can't make this up. And why? Because here's this report dated October 1. The Biden-Harris administration took more than $1 billion tax dollars that had been allocated to FEMA, which is responsible for American disaster relief, and used it to offer services for illegal immigrants. The federal FEMA allocated, get this, nearly $364 million in fiscal year 2023 for illegals and $650 million in fiscal year 2024 to its Shelter and Services Program, which provide humanitarian services to non-citizen migrants, illegals, ladies and gentlemen. The program is run in cooperation with U.S. Customs and Border Protection to support safe, orderly, and humane release of non-citizen migrants from short-term holding facilities. Yeah. So if you're a lifelong resident of the hill country, the mountain country of North Carolina, Boone, Asheville, Chimney Rock, Lake Lure, Spruce Springs, I think it's called. Many of them, some of them even lifelong Carolinians haven't heard of until this episode. If you live there, you don't get squat. But if you're here illegally, you get fed, you get housing, you get medical care, you get free public education. It is insane. You know, if you didn't know better, you'd think this was a deliberate betrayal of our own citizens by the federal government, okay? And meanwhile, FEMA's top priorities under its administration do not include disaster relief among its two stated top goals, according to its own website. You can check this out for yourself. The stated goals include, first, instilling, quote, equity as a foundation of emergency management, and second, quote, leading whole of community climate resistance. The goal to promote and sustain a ready FEMA and prepared nation ranks third. I'll give you an example because I was on the FEMA website. I wanted to see this insanity for myself. So part of their guidelines say this about hauling debris. This is just one example. FEMA hauling debris. Before the debris is hauled and taken away from the affected area, the team must first consider whether or not the debris will pass through low-income areas that are economically deprived and therefore might need to reroute the debris. Never mind removing the debris. It's all about where the route you used to take the debris out of town. This is what they're focusing on at FEMA. This is like every other federal agency. This is like the Secret Service. This is like our Department of Defense across the board, our military assets, everything poisoned by diversity, equity, and inclusion nonsense. It makes you want to throw up. Residents across the southeastern United States are suffering from the administration's misplaced priorities, even as we speak. Even as we speak. And that is the truth, ladies and gentlemen. All right, I've covered the FEMA's grotesque, vile abuse of funds. Now let's get back to the humanitarian side of this disaster, okay? I wish we had time to tell all the stories because there are hundreds and thousands of them. This one caught my attention from a gentleman named Sam Perkins. He was reporting from another small hamlet in the mountains called Little Switzerland. Very quaint. Here's what he posted on social media after he got back to a place where he could access the internet. Not having heard from my parents in 48 hours. This was posted on October 2nd at noon. Not having heard from my parents in 48 hours, I was drowning in worry. You can imagine. My parents live in an absolute gem of the North Carolina mountains, the Little Switzerland, Spruce Pine, Burnsville area, halfway between Asheville and Boone. This area is completely cut off from resources in every direction, Mr. Perkins writes. After trying multiple routes by car, I had to settle on hiking 11 miles. Now, I don't know about you, but I'm not sure I could endure an 11-mile hike, especially in these conditions, these ravaged conditions. But he hikes 11 miles and 2,200 feet to find my parents okay, but surrounded by devastation. Crews were not even close to reaching them. I can't tell you how many failing roads and deep mudslides I had to cross. Most of all, I want my parents to have the same basic needs they always provided me. Food, water, shelter. But they can't even leave their home right now. The steep part of their gravel road has braided channels only 18 inches wide and up to 5 feet deep from rushing water. It's just a waiting game now. And they've been waiting, and they've been waiting. And yet, the 1,000 personnel coming out of Fort Bragg were only given the green light by the president, so-called, of the United States yesterday, October 2nd, okay? And FEMA has continued to be slow in response. And as a result, you have got private citizens doing all the heavy lifting. Now, I spoke to one of them actually earlier today. His name is Slim Thompson. Slim Thompson. And I hope I can find my notes. Here he is. Here's Slim. Hi, Slim. He runs an organization out of the Moore County Regional Airport called Sovereign Aerospace. He is the founder and CEO. After retiring from the military, the Air Force, in 2014, a decade ago, Slim, with a group of other retirees, bought their own Piper Cherokee aircraft. That's a single-engine light aircraft, a Piper Cherokee, one of the most universally well-known aircraft in its class. And they used it for Christian missions and humanitarian efforts. This was 10 years ago. Since that time, he has expanded Sovereign Aerospace with a community of like-minded aviators, and now they operate a flight school, aviation repair and maintenance operations, a 501c3 supporting transitioning veterans, and help with advanced entrepreneurial startups. This is wonderful. Today, he has 25 employees who manage 16 aircraft. Well, what do you suppose Slim Thompson has been up to the last few days? I talked to him. They've been flying supplies out of Moore County Airport out west, turning around, coming back, and doing it again day after day. And then I asked him this question. Now, just the logistics of what they're doing is one thing: loading up the aircraft, figuring out which airports to go, then unloading their supplies, offloading, I guess is the proper word, and then coming back. I said, Slim, what does it cost to operate an aircraft full of cargo, at its weight capacity? What is it? What are the fuel costs of that? And he said, well, depending on the size of the aircraft and the weight, it can be $300-400 an hour. Okay, so you figure it's probably round trip back and forth a little over an hour to some of these airports, maybe more, maybe 90 minutes with some of the lighter aircraft. You're talking about each time a donation in the form of, let's call it $500 to $600. He said some of the larger aircrafts will run at $900 an hour on fuel burn. And people are spending this money. So if you're thinking of another way to donate to the cause here, in addition to all these organizations you've been hearing about, like Samaritan's Purse and World Chef Kitchen and Operation Airdrop, I would suggest you check in with Sovereign Aerospace at the airport and find out how you can donate some money to Slim and his pilots and help them pay their fuel bills. And by the way, thanks to the Joe Biden administration, aviation fuel is also very expensive compared to what it was just a few short years ago. So that's the story. I'm so glad, the silver lining of these kinds of tragedies is that you meet these incredible people and their stories, move you to the core. And you just wish, wow, I wish I'd known this person sooner than now. I wish I'd had a chance to meet them before. But thank God for all of them, really. One image that came up on social media, again, this just shows you the willingness of people to risk their own lives to save others. Look at this. This guy is buried like up to his neck in a mudslide. Somebody happened to find him. And what are these guys doing? They're using their bare hands to dig him out of the mud. And from the reporting I saw, they succeeded in saving this guy who was probably just a few minutes away from death. Just a few minutes away. And these images are coming at us every single day. They break your heart, but they also restore your faith, don't they? And American courage and spirit is unparalleled anywhere in this world. And we're seeing it again and again and again in the mountains of Western North Carolina. Now, before we go, I want to touch base on a political season story, which is quite important. It involves a gentleman named Gordon Sondland. Now, who is Gordon Sondland? Gordon was a Trump presidency ambassador to the European Union. He is an extremely successful hotel chain owner, Gordon Sondland. He also, however, at some point turned on Donald Trump. When Trump faced his first impeachment, Gordon Sondland was hauled in as a witness to describe why he supported the impeachment of Donald Trump. Okay, that was 2022. 2019. Let's call it, toward the end of Trump's term. Just this week on MSNBC of all places, Gordon Sondland is on a 3-person panel. Listen to what he has to say now, and listen to how beside himself with despair this MSNBC talking head is that Gordon Sondland has now seen the light and says he will back Donald Trump. He will vote for him in November, if not sooner. Gordon Sondland.
Was it important for you to say no more Trump because of his January 6th conduct, and do you stand by that?
No, I don't stand by it, and I'll tell you why. I've now lived 4 years under the Biden-Harris policies, and I have to say that those policies are not only becoming an existential threat to our country's way of life, but to our allies as well.
So when you I'll let you finish, but this is so striking. You said it was a no for me after that, after January 6th.
I did.
And here we are right now.
I did.
And you're saying it's a yes for you.
It is a yes for me. It is an absolute yes for me. That is how badly the Biden-Harris team have prosecuted their job.
But the whole point you seem to be making was that January 6th and that kind of attack on democracy is bigger than any policy.
But I am seeing so many attacks on democracy that eclipse January 6th.
Finally, because we always have to keep an eye on the financial big picture, don't we, folks? We sure do. And our economy is teetering on the brink, as we've discussed over and over again on this podcast, and as comes up almost daily somewhere for those who are paying attention. And I urge you to pay attention. With only, by the time you see this, 13 days until the start of early voting in North Carolina, and 32 days until Election Day, November 5. Time is slipping away. If you feel that you're not informed and ready to vote, now's the time to start paying attention. One of the best economic analysts in the country, E.J. Antoni, reports that on the first day of the new fiscal year, which is 1 October, the federal debt exploded, jumping $204 billion in one day to a new record. $35.66 trillion is the federal debt as we speak, and it's rising with each breath that we take. It was 34 trillion when this year started. Now it's going to hit easily 36 trillion before the calendar year ends. And then he writes this, but it gets worse. On the same day, the U.S. Treasury had to draw down its cash balance by $72 billion. That's over $275 billion in the red for just one day. $275 billion in the red, adding to our debt bomb that is ticking. And when it detonates, ladies and gentlemen, it is going to have the financial effect similar to a Hurricane Helene, except it will be on our economy. And it will be just as devastating, except for more people in a different kind of way. People who will see their wherewithal to survive in this country in jeopardy, their ability to own homes, save money, invest, send kids to better education, to private schools, to colleges, to universities. All of those things will be jeopardized when this debt bomb detonates, and it's coming. It is coming. I can assure you of that. So what to do now? Pray. Keep our people in your prayers, not just the ones who are ravaged and stranded and starving and dying, but all these brave individuals, these private citizens with their helicopters and their airplanes and their hiking boots, along with our U.S. military and our other federal responders, first responders. Pray for them because they need our prayers. If you can do nothing else, do that. Secondly, do your research and determine where you can donate and make a difference. Thirdly, go to your grocery stores, go to your Walmarts, your hardware stores, your Lowe's Home Improvements. Go online and figure out what the needs are for these people, and then collect up supplies and drop them off at the designated areas in your community. They will be delivered, and they'll get there more efficiently and more quickly than the federal government will get them there. I guarantee you that. So that's what you can do. The other thing you can do is vote early on October 17th. Both sides of the ballot, please. Every vote counts. Every race counts. And then you turn your attention to the people in your sphere of influence. That's a fancy phrase for the people you go to church with, the people you work with, the people you volunteer with, the people you go to class with if you're in college, your neighbors, your relatives, even the ones you don't like very well. You need to appeal to these people to make sure that they're registered to vote and that they plan to vote. And if they need a way to get to the polls, take them there, get them there, help them. And make sure every vote is chased, every ballot is tracked down, and every ballot that's out there, whether it's been mailed in, absentee, or whether it's waiting for someone at early voting, the two locations, Lake Aberdeen and the Moore County Ag Center in Carthage, make sure every ballot that should be cast is cast. This is very important, along with these humanitarian aid priorities that we have. Folks, every week it seems like there's a reason to lose hope, but we don't do that in this country. We're Americans. So let's stay true to our spirit. Let's cling to our belief in God and His will. And I hope you'll be back next time for another production from Beneath the Pines of the Liberty Podcast.